Do you find yourself discouraged? Do you feel like you're dismayed? Well, maybe the problem is the direction of your gaze. What if you altered your perspective and looked up? You might just find that you're amazed. So look up. Don't get discouraged. Look up. You'll be encouraged because it's a great day to be alive and it's a great day to grow inside. Hi, thanks for joining me today for another episode of Look Up, a time where I try to build you up, encourage you, strengthen you, build your faith, and equip you for life's challenges. Each show I've designed to help viewers, give them some things to think about, to challenge them, things to reflect upon, but also leaving you with something to smile about. So I'm here to stand with you. I want you to always feel like there's no judgment, there's no condemnation. I am here standing beside you, walking through this journey of life with you, encouraging you, uplifting you, strengthening you, and just sharing some of the things that I've learned in the years that I've served, in prevention, my years in education, as well as just some of the journey that I've had in life so that I can pass those lessons on to you. Because again, that saying is that hurting people hurt people. So if we don't take the time to really work on ourselves, to kind of be self-aware and understand a little bit more about ourselves, some of our past, some of those wounds, if we don't do that, we'll end up hurting other people. We may bleed on the very people that didn't cause the wound. So I really want to encourage you. Another saying I just love is that courage is what it takes to stand up and speak, but courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. So I thank you for taking the courage to sit down, to listen, to join me on this journey, and to really work on yourselves, because we all have to do that. I think when we do, we feel that joy in life, when we can heal from the wounds and be set free from them. So we can be victorious in this life, not feeling like we're a victim of this life. So grab some paper and pencil, because I always want you to reflect, even journal if you'd like to journal. I want you to reflect on the topics that we have and pass this episode kind of thinking about some of these things that we talk about. So recap on the first episode, which I would encourage you to go back and listen to. I really spoke about identity and understanding our identity, who we are. And I think that's kind of that foundation that we really need to establish, because if we don't know who we are, then we're going to be tossed back and forth in this life, not really knowing who am I? You know, what do I believe? What are my foundations of who I am? So understanding that, I believe, is so important. And I always try to tie in that spiritual health with your mental health, because I believe the two are truly tied together. So I challenge you in your spiritual health to really understand, again, who does God say that I am? Because if God created me, then he knows me a lot better than I know myself. So when we look into God's word and understanding who he says that I am, and if I believe that and I walk in that truth, then that identity piece is going to be answered. I'm not going to have to stumble back and forth every time something happens in this life, because they will. You know, in this life, we will have trials. We will have struggles. Jesus said that himself. You know, life is going to be hard. So if we can be prepared, if we can have those tools when life gets challenging, we're going to be able to tackle it a lot better. So I mentioned too that Psalms 139, which is a great verse to meditate on and really think about, because it's a lot higher in our thoughts than we can really comprehend in our human thinking. And it says that before we were born, God knit us together in our mother's womb, and that he wrote a book about our lives. He set us apart for great things. So when we can believe that, when we understand that and really accept that as truth, that will really motivate and guide our daily decisions and where we go. So for today's topic, we're going to look at perspective. And perspective comes from the Latin root word meaning to look through something. So I have an image here that I want to show you to get you started with this. So what do you see when you look at this image? Now, look at it again, because you may see one picture the first time, but take a look a second time, a second look, and see if you see anything different. You may have seen like a gentleman looking like he's playing a saxophone, and then also the face of a woman. So what's interesting is when you look at this picture, the image never changed, but what you saw changed based on what you were focusing your attention on. And I think that's so parallel to our day-to-day lives. What are we choosing to focus our attention on? You know, they say if you look at how you spend your time, your talents, your money, your treasures, so to speak, it will guide to what is important in your life. So, what are we focusing on? What are we focusing our time on? What are we focusing our attention on? How are we spending our money, our resources? Is it what we want to do or where we want to go in this life? Because if it's not, we can change it. We have the power to change it. And if we don't, I believe it's like that definition of insanity where you're doing the same thing, but you're expecting different results. We need to do something different if we want different results. So if life isn't working like you want it to work, I encourage you to think about changing that perspective, changing your thinking, changing how you're spending your time, gifts, and talents so that you can get some different results. So looking beyond, when we look at perspective as well, that definition of looking through something, looking beyond ourselves, our present circumstances, our failures, our mistakes, looking beyond all of that and looking through to see what else is there? What else can I find in this day-to-day life beyond my present circumstances? And sometimes it's stepping back and really kind of looking inside of ourselves. So a lot of times people don't like to go deep. They like to kind of mask some of those feelings that don't feel good, right? That pain, maybe the tears that may come, but that's all part of the healing process. You know, we don't have to be afraid of tears. You know, crying and getting those emotions out is part of the healing process. You know, just recently, you may have seen, if you watched the first episode, I lost my father a little over a month ago. And, you know, those tears keep coming. And sometimes I try to fight them off and think, you know, I don't want to cry. I just don't want to be upset anymore. But the tears are a gift. They're helping me heal. They're evidence that I had great love for my dad. And that's a beautiful thing because there are some people when they leave this world and they're no longer in your life, you don't have a lot of tears. And, you know, having tears it can be a good thing. Healing can be a good thing. And I encourage you that it is a good thing. So don't be afraid of the pain. Don't be afraid to dig deep. I believe truly that the things that happen to us in our lives can refine us. They don't have to define us. Think about that for a minute. Being refined instead of defined by your circumstances. What does that mean? Well, in Psalms 66, God talks about how he tests us and refines us like silver in a fire. And so I wondered once, you know, what is a blacksmith? What does refining in the fire really mean? And it's amazing when you learn about this. So a blacksmith will put metal in the fire and he has to keep his eye on it at all times or it'll burn up and get consumed. And he's twisting and turning it. And all along, he's trying to get the impurities out because if he can get the impurities out of the metal, it becomes stronger. So I believe that is such a beautiful analogy of God allowing us to go through hard times, refining us, allowing us to get all the junk out inside of us so that we can become stronger. And even they asked the blacksmith once, how do you know when all of the impurities are out? And his answer was, when I can see my reflection in it. And again, I think that just points back beautifully to what God is trying to speak here. He wants to see his reflection in our lives. So he has to get all of that stuff out. He has to help us work through all of the tough stuff so that we can become more like him, holier, maybe not as much happier at certain times. You know, that idea of God can be more concerned for our holiness than our happiness. And a lot of people struggle with that. But I think when we look at a parent-child relationship, a lot of times we have to help children through some things, some lessons they have to learn, and they're not always happy about it. It may not make them happy in the moment, but we know it's for their best. It's for their good. So I think similarly, sometimes we can get caught up in the why, God, why is this happening to me? Why did I have to go through this? And I would challenge you, just like I've learned myself, instead of why, asking what. What can I learn from this? What are you teaching me? Because I think that we can get so caught up in the whys. And that's where I think we can get that victim mentality of why is this happening to me? I'm a victim of my life. But the empowerment is when we can see that we're not victims, we're victors. We can be victorious in this life. We just have to choose to look at things differently. We have to choose our thoughts differently. So diamonds are created under pressure. And I think that's another thing to meditate and think about. The pressures that we can feel in this life of ours can make us something stronger and better if we let them. The other piece of this, kind of going along with all of it, is I always would teach students this when I would do lessons, is that pain can be a gift. And they would often, fight me on this. What are you talking about? No one wants to feel pain. But imagine a child putting their hand on a hot burner. That pain that they feel is a gift because they're going to pull their hand back and they're likely going to remember that pain and they're not going to want to go back and do it again. Versus if they didn't feel it at all and they kept their hand there, they're going to have some severe damage. So when we feel the pains in this life, it can really get us kind of pulling back a little bit and thinking, all right, is there anything I can adjust? Sometimes the pain is self-induced. We make choices that end up hurting us and end up hurting people around us. So being able to feel that pain can get us to go, okay, that's a consequence I don't want. Let me pull back and make a different decision. So I wanted to also show you the ACEs, the adverse childhood events. So this was done in a study in the 90s by a team of medical doctors. And they wanted to see, was there a connection between how adults health-wise, how their health was as far as illnesses, disease, poor quality of life? Was there a connection between their mental or their physical health and what they went through, these adverse childhood events, these traumas and pains that they may have went through before the age of 19? So under the age of 18, when they were still growing up and going through life and developing, they found that the more adverse childhood events, and you can look this up for yourself and kind of score yourself to see how many you have, the more you had, the more likely you were to have adult illnesses, disease, poor quality of life, even early death. Because a lot of times, again, when you look at what people go through as a child, and they don't often connect this into how they're reacting as adults, but that neglect, maybe abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, household challenges like divorce, violence, substance use in the family, mental illness, long-term illness, incarceration, all of those things, kids don't know how to deal with those things. We forget that our brains aren't fully developed until they say our mid-20s. So we're not able as young people to process thoughts and think about things as we can as adults. So a lot of times when these things happen for a young person, they don't know how to deal with it. So they try to cope in other ways. Maybe they try to escape. Maybe they just try to, forget about it. Maybe they overeat, all of those things, pulling back and not being social. They often don't talk about the problems that they've gone through. And that's why we need to kind of dig a little deeper and look at that, because I think so often as adults, we're going around thinking we're doing okay, trying to fool people around us, but we're still that little kid inside. And a lot of times we may still have that fear that we had as a child because of some of these things we went through, or that anger inside of us. And you'll often see it comes out in high stressful situations. Crisis type situations. You're going to see people reacting based on a lot of times some of those traumas that they're still holding on to from a youth. So I encourage you to check that out for yourself, score yourself, kind of see where you're at, and then dig a little deeper on healing from some of those wounds. And I can help you along the way through this show, I believe, to be able to see that we don't have to, again, be defined by those things. We can be refined and made better and stronger from it. The other beautiful part of this is I think it shows how our bodies innately try to help us adapt and cope with these situations. So our brain and our nervous system, it's that fight or flight. It tries to protect us when we're going through these tough situations. So an example I had heard that I thought kind of illustrates this beautifully is there was a woman who was sexually abused and she never spoke of it. She didn't tell anyone about it. So here she is as an adult, and she still struggles with hearing voices at night. And oftentimes these voices she felt torment her, telling her they're coming for you. She would hear that voice over and over again. And she realized when she admitted and spoke about her abuse and got the help that she needed and healed from it, the voices went away. And I think sometimes it's that brain of ours trying to protect us, from some of the things that we went through. So I think that helps us understand ourselves better, but it also helps us understand those around us a little bit better and learning how we can cope and heal in healthy ways. So instead of looking at people and thinking, what's wrong with you? We can change our perspective and start looking at them with the thought of what happened to you. Because again, going back to that hurting people hurt people, I think so often that's what we're seeing. People that are reacting in hurtful ways to us, but it's just them trying to cope with things that they really have not dealt with in their life. They're struggling. So when we can have that empathy and that thought of what happened to you versus what's wrong with you, it helps us be able to reach out to them in love instead of judgment. So I think we're in time for a short commercial break. So enjoy this short commercial and I'll see you back in just a bit.
Hello, we are the MD and Chef team. I'm nutritional chef Michael, joined by my beautiful wife, Dr. Isabel, medical doctor and suicide survivor.
Yes, I was dropped into the world of mental illness back in 2013, and by the grace of God, I survived suicide. But here's what I learned. We don't have a mental illness issue. That's the downstream event. We're focusing downstream. We should be focusing upstream on our brain health and all the things that we can be doing to support our brain health. Because you see, it's like mopping up the floor when the sink is overflowing instead of turning off the faucet. So come and join us on the MD and Chef Team show.
Come join us.
Hello, my name is Charles Schultz, host of The Edge of Greatness. I hope you choose to join me on a journey into discovering the greatness in your life through the exploration of 7 pillars: purpose, mindset, resilience, discipline, commitment, people, and courage. Hope you see you there.
One week after launching our exclusive sneak peek, NGBN TV was live for 3 days of continuous coverage from Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas.
NGBN TV is live from Las Vegas for Super Bowl 58.
The one-of-a-kind streaming TV network for men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s was the conversation for the big game about men's mental health. In the world of athletes, celebrities, and influencers, we're on notice. But we're just getting started with new partnerships announced like the Team Nike 3-on-3 Championship and new platforms available to download the NGBN TV app. So, what are you waiting for? Download the app today from your favorite streaming device or check us out at ngbn.tv. This is NGBN TV.
Welcome back. did you know that you can be a part of all of this, that you can support this network and its mission to helping reduce suicide rates in men and supporting people in their mental health? It can be as easy as just standing beside us, because those of us that are making content for this network are doing it because we care, and it's costing us. It's an endeavor that we are investing in, but we would love if you could stand beside us and support us in this endeavor. So if you could help cover some of the cost of the network and these shows, you can go to NGBN TV, the website, and be able to look at how you can support the shows individually or the network itself. And I would love and thank you if you could be a part of all that. And with that comes the blessing, I think, that we all get when we get to stand beside something and put our money into something that is valuable, something we believe in, something that will give back to others. So thank you. So looking a little deeper into all of this, thinking about how are you coping with life's challenges? You know, we mentioned that definition of insanity, of doing the same thing and expecting different results. We have to sometimes do things differently if we want things to end up differently for us. And thinking again, instead of asking the whys, why did this happen to me? Asking the whats, what can this teach me? What can I learn from this? So that we can become better instead of bitter. We've known people in this life that are bitter. They're holding on to, and carrying all of that anger inside of them from things that happened to them in the past, things that maybe they did that they're not forgiving themselves for. And that does us no good. So when we can release ourselves from that, when we can forgive ourselves and forgive others, again, that rope that was tied around us gets released. We feel free. And then we're able to be better. We can use the lessons that we've learned to help other people. I love this other visual of a needlepoint example. So if you look on the flip side of a needlepoint, now I don't needlepoint myself, but I have a visual for you to see. If you look on the flip side, it looks like a bunch of mess. I mean, it's just a bunch of knots everywhere, colors everywhere. It looks like chaos. And if you were to look at that, no one would, think that looks any good. It wouldn't make any sense. And I think reflecting on our lives, that sometimes the things we go through in this life, it doesn't make sense. We don't understand. But one day, I believe it'll be flipped over and we'll see that work of art that God created out of the mess. We'll see how everything wove together. Romans 8 says that he weaves everything together for our good, for those that love him. So how do you know if you love him? Do you obey him? Do you trust him? That's how you know. That's how you know if you love him. So there's a condition. If we love him, if we follow him, he promises he's going to work it all out for our good. He will redeem our detours. And when you look at the Bible, I've been encouraged with the thought that he always ends on a positive. God always ends on a positive. You know, it may look rough for a while, the stories and the examples that are given, but then he ends on a positive. He reminds us to take heart. He has overcome this world. We're going to have struggles, but we can rest and be assured in him. So it kind of leans into that identity question again. Who is he? You know, who is God? If we're going to lean on him, then just like our identity, knowing who we are, I think it's important that we know who he is. So he tells us who he is. He gives us names. He revealed names throughout the Bible of who he was. So he's got names such as Jehovah Jireh. He's our provider. Jehovah Rapha. He's our healer. Jehovah Shammah. He's always there. Jehovah Shalom. He's our peace. Jehovah Nisi, he fights our battles. Jehovah, I'm not sure how to say that one. Rohi, I believe. He's our good shepherd. And Jehovah Tisinu, I believe is how you say that one. He is our righteousness. So when we can understand who he is, if we choose to believe that, then it's going to guide us through the struggles of this world. It's going to help us cope. And I think going into that is also this idea of how do we then cope with other people? How do we deal with other people, the struggles of this world when that other people bring our way? And I like to assume goodwill. So I assume that they're not out to hurt me. I assume that, they're not out to upset me. So then I'm not walking around feeling offended and angry. I think it's going back to that hurting people hurt people. When I can just love on people, it sets me free and it sets them free. It helps me to have more joy in my day to day. So I can forgive them for their mistakes. I can understand that, just like I said in the first episode, you are more than the choices that you've made, the mistakes that you've made, the failures, or even the accomplishments. But understanding that the people that are around you day to day are more than that too. So we can forgive them. We can have compassion and love on them. Another thing I wanted to share with you is what's called the 40 developmental assets. So if you search this 40 developmental assets, you'll come across what those are. And they were a list created to try to help youth, and research was done on how youth could be more resilient in life. If they had more of these assets, they were able to get through the trials and the struggles of growing up, of life that came their way. And the one that was found to be the most impactful is feeling close and being able to trust at least one adult in their life. So I share that with you to encourage and empower you that we can all be that one adult that reaches out, that connects with someone, that supports them, that's there for them, that shows that we care. Because there's a whole lot of hurting people in this world, and they're really wanting to know, does anyone really care? Does anyone really see me? Does anyone notice? And when we can be that person that notices, that's such a powerful, powerful tool. So digging a little deeper, thinking about kind of wrapping up what we talked about, remembering, looking at people of what happened to you versus what's wrong with you, building that empathy and that love for other people. Another thing you can search and look up is called the Cleveland Clinic Empathy Video. And they also made one called the Student Empathy Video that's under the name Under the Surface. So if you go to YouTube and search that, you'll find that. But it has a bunch of people walking around, no words. You just see words on the screen that what is going through or what's going on with them that we don't see. So we pass people every day on and off in our lives. We don't know what they're thinking, what they're going through, what they're trying to deal with. So it has people walking through a hospital and the little blurb coming up of, I'm here because the birth of my child. It's an exciting time. And another one is I'm saying goodbye to my dad, which I could relate to. You just don't know. You don't know what everyone's going through. So if we can have that assuming goodwill attitude, that love in our hearts to be able to love on people and be there for them, that can make all the difference in the world. So choosing to see the good in every day. Every day may not be good, but I believe there's good in every day because God created it and He's in it and He is good. So I know that there is good in every day. I just have to find it. I have to see it. I have to choose to see it. And that's the struggle at times. But if we can get in the habit of doing that, you'll find that your life feels so much more fulfilled. You'll be able to give back and spend time giving back to others, which will fill you up in return. And just remembering, God says that He prays for us daily. That's encouraging. If God is praying for me, I feel pretty empowered that I can get through my day. And that He never gives up on us, that no weapon formed against me is going to prosper, He says. He promises that. So that empowers me again to be able to take each day for what it is, not run ahead and think about tomorrow. Take each day, trust Him, walk with Him, and look for the good in each day. So I'm going to close by just praying for you again. I love the privilege of being able to pray for you. And just reminding you that when life feels heavy, don't forget to look up and remember that you're not alone in this great big world, that life is more than just about our wants and our needs, something bigger than that. You are valuable. You are precious. You have gifts inside of you that God ordained and put inside of you. You are meant to do great things in this world. So dig deep, find out what they are, and walk in them. Lord, I just thank you so much for everyone that listened and joined us today. I thank you for their lives. I thank you for the gift of their lives, for everything that they do. I thank you, Lord, that you are with them. Encourage them, empower them, help them to see the goodness in every day, the beauty in every day, the beauty in themselves and the beauty in those around them. And I thank you, Lord, for just bringing them all here together. And until we meet again, help us to continue to look up and remember that we're not alone in this great big world. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Look Up.